Initially, I took Transformers number 15 to be little more than a setup issue. That is, an issue for moving the various players into place for the next big set pieces and emotional character beats. After reading the issue a few more times and sitting with it for a while, however, I've come to the conclusion that Transformers number 15 is much more substantial than I gave it credit for after my first reading. That doesn't mean this is not a setup issue, it certainly is, and I have no doubts that it will feed into some cathartic payoffs later on, but the issue is not just moving the plot along towards the next big moment. Issue 15 stands on its own quite well, and that's because what makes the series resonate so strongly, the beating heart, if you will, is fully bared as the creative team continues to build upon the themes and character development we've seen up to this point. The broad strokes of the major plot details are fairly straightforward in Transformers number 15. Soundwave and the Decepticons wreak havoc in Tacoma, Washington to lure the Autobots out. RC, Carly, Beachcomber, and Spike depart from the Ark to go find Ultra Magnus. Cliffjumper is reunited with a group of Elita's Autobots on Cybertron. Optimus loses control again, this time putting humans at risk, and the two distinct Decepticon factions led by Soundwave and Starscream challenge each other with the Autobots stuck in the middle. This brisk overview gives a sense of how all the parts are moving towards future events. But the creative team goes the extra mile here to imbue each thread with something impactful. Whether it was simply the spectacle of a masterfully done image, like the last page, one of the best in the issue, where we see the Combaticons combining into Bruticus, and we literally see pieces of the Gestalt coming together, or some of the more emotionally resonant character moments, like Thundercracker's distaste for Soundwave's methods, manifesting in an act of mercy, where the Seeker secretly spares a group of humans. Whatever the case, each sequence in this issue contains something memorable. And while there is plenty to talk about, there are two specific instances of character and theme that I want to focus on. The first is Cliffjumper's reunion with the Autobots on Cybertron. I was extremely happy to see Bluestreak make an appearance in this issue, as the Datsun Bros are some of my favorite G1 designs in general, but Bluestreak specifically has a color scheme that I've always found to be very lovely. But what really makes his appearance in issue 15 a standout moment is what the creative team does with him. I've always thought of Bluestreak as being an affable Autobot, most likely informed primarily by Casey Kasem's portrayal of the character in the G1 cartoon. His G1 bio makes it clear that while Bluestreak has no love for the Decepticons, he hates war, and his disdain for combat has the potential to make him a liability in a fight. That is not the case with the Skybound iteration of the character. Bluestreak is reimagined here as a hardened guerrilla warrior with nothing but contempt for Optimus Prime and his soft ideology. This character has adapted to the harsh realities of waging an unwinnable war under the command of Elita 1, an Autobot who refuses to give up the fight. Johnson's script and Corona's art do equal lifting in conveying to the reader that this isn't the same Bluestreak we grew up with. And we get the first sign of that when we see the character dismiss Warpath's concern over Cup and Huffer by directly echoing Elita 1's words to Optimus Prime in issue number 9. They're gone. This subtle example of Elita's influence is brought fully into the light in the next sequence, when the reunion between the Autobots takes a shocking and uneasy turn. Bluestreak kills Ramjet with no hesitation, and he and Blur begin to collect the Decepticons' leaking energon, and it's here that we fully see the creative team's intention with the character. The panel with Bluestreak stealth-killing Ramjet is one of the best panels of the entire series for me, but there's some incredible visual storytelling throughout this sequence, with the art giving the dialogue plenty of heft, showing us a Bluestreak covered in the energon scavenged from a fresh kill, sneering at Cliffjumper's response to the violence, and scoffing at the influence of Optimus Prime on the Minibot's ideology. We quickly learn Bluestreak is another example of the Cybertronian War bringing out the worst in its participants, a recurring element of Johnson's run on the series. Bluestreak is fully invested in Elita's pursuit of survival at any brutal cost. Cliffjumper is understandably disgusted by Bluestreak's actions, and I fear for what might happen to the little guy next. But there's no denying that I am very much compelled to watch this fascinating reversal of the events in the second arc, where we saw Elita join up with Optimus Prime's Autobots, resulting in ideological divisions and clashes that nearly culminated with the complete decimation of Earth. This time around, Cliffjumper is the odd one out, alone with the bitter, jaded Autobots left behind on Cybertron, who all seem to be united in their disgust with Optimus Prime. I thought the point had been made by the end of Volume 2 with the Cybertron-based Autobots, but it seems we're not done with these characters just yet, and ultimately I'm glad for that. And I think it makes sense as well. It might have been too soon to let go of such a great character like Elita 1, as well as the clash between the different groups of Autobots. Based on what's going on with the Decepticons, exploring these ideological divisions within the two factions doesn't seem like it'll be dying down anytime soon. If anything, they're ramping up. Regardless, the antagonistic relationship between Optimus and Elita is extremely compelling, so I'm in favor of watching it continue to develop, and it seems like the comic is on track to deliver in that regard. Of course, we can't talk about Transformers number 15 without talking about all of the great moments with Optimus Prime in this issue. There are some real duality of man moments with the Autobot Commander in this issue, where we get a very well done juxtaposition of the Optimus we all know and love with the one that first reared his head in issue 12 when he killed Shockwave. The interaction here between RC, Beachcomber, and Optimus show an Optimus Prime at his very best, with behavior and a demeanor that is very much on brand, consistent with what we would expect from the character. With RC, Optimus shows unending support, compassion, and understanding. With Beachcomber, even though Optimus might not fully agree with Minibot's perspective, he nonetheless respects it and allows Beachcomber to follow his own moral compass. Compare this segment with RC and Beachcomber to the one in Tacoma when Optimus loses control. Whereas the ideal version of Optimus, the one we've known up to this point, is patient and charitable towards others, the version that attacks the tank is not. He appears to be judgmental and contemptuous, filled with rage, and above all, willing to act on that anger that he feels. Consider issue 4, where Ratchet and Prime argue over whether humanity is worth protecting. This exchange is a great example of the normal Optimus, one who is able to see the forest for the trees. He sees the good in humanity, and it outweighs the bad. When he loses control in issue 15, he also loses sight of the bigger picture, and as a result, only sees the negative. The stark contrast between Optimus in his normal state and when he's lost control really drives home that what's at stake in this comic right now is the very soul of Optimus Prime. The visions he's been experiencing since issue 7 continue to play a part, although the exact cause and meaning behind the imagery remains unclear. Until issue 12, Optimus seemed to be experiencing Sparkplug's memories, but we see a change happen during the conflict with Shockwave. In one panel, Optimus sees himself holding what looks to be Spike as a baby. Then, as he loses control of himself, the image becomes different, with the Autobot Commander's hands becoming claws and a mess of wires and mechanical parts replacing the blanket wrapped around the infant, as well as spilling out of his eyes and mouth in a fairly horrifying fashion. We see a similar image in issue 15 when he loses control again. Whatever may be causing these episodes, these unsettling visions are becoming an indicator that our Optimus is being corrupted and overridden by a more violent, angry version of himself. One of Optimus Prime's greatest strengths is his almost superheroic ability for self-control and his generosity of spirit. He's able to maintain his composure in the face of overwhelming odds, and even under the worst of circumstances, he's able to regulate his impulses and always see the best in others. So there's something tragic and terrifying about a character who is so disciplined, principled, and strong-willed, completely losing control. And this is a fascinating conflict and complication for a character who is, in many ways, a paragon. How do you fight something that overrides your conscious mind? And what happens when nobody's there to stop Prime from doing something he would truly regret? This series has introduced an element of danger into a character that has always been a symbol of safety. a protector, and a champion of the defenseless. The Autobots have often been on the back foot in this series, but now, with Optimus being a ticking time bomb, they've never been more vulnerable, and their situation has never seemed so precarious. Whether the corruption of Optimus Prime is due to Sparky interfacing with the Matrix, the influence of Megatron's arm, or both, remains to be seen. This issue is drawing our attention to the Matrix angle, so maybe that's all there is to it, but I've still got questions about Megatron's arm. Again, after seeing how easily the Decepticon leader attached his left arm in the Energon Universe special, as well as his apparent ability to coerce others to do his bidding, as seen in issue number 14. And as others have pointed out, there's the whole thing during the confrontation between Optimus and Shockwave, with Megatron's hand seemingly doing a similar gouging action, which I'm not sure if it's a coincidence or not, but it is a bit fishy regardless. And speaking of potential coincidences, look at this wholesome panel of Optimus hugging RC. Specifically, look at the Megatron arm. As far as hugs go, does the way that this fist seems a little flexed seem strange to anyone else, or is it just me? Is this potentially anything sinister, or am I just imagining it? It's possible I'm reaching here. Let me know what you think in the comments. But other than that, we're about at the end here. Before we wrap up though, we have to tally the body count. The sequence set in Tacoma is pretty much impossible to count in an exact way. There's definitely at least one person in the police cruiser that I imagine is dead after getting smashed by the Constructicons, but until there's something more definitive, I'm going to just add a vague indicator for an unknown number of fatalities for the city. If we get some kind of news report or statistic relayed in-universe, I can update it to something more specific. But for now, the best we can do is say that it's somewhere between 1 and the population of Tacoma, which is around 220,000 people. Yeah, there's just no way to be sure right now. There are, thankfully, much easier ones to keep track of throughout the rest of this issue. Warpath surviving means we subtract 1, but we just add it back again for Ramjet, so no change to the total, really. I could maybe count Trailbreaker, but I'm not 100% sure if he's dead yet. It seems likely. Seems really likely, actually. But I'm going to wait until next issue to see if there's any kind of confirmation one way or the other. So yeah, overall, not much movement in terms of the specifics, though that's a little misleading as there's a pretty substantial implied but unknown number of fatalities in Tacoma. Overall, though, this was such a great issue. While I enjoyed Jason Howard's work in the previous 2 issues, it's great to have Jorge Corona back. And while the art was spectacular throughout, the pages with Blue Streak killing Ramjet, Optimus attacking the tank, and Bruticus are all top tier. Some of the best in the entire series, in my opinion. New colorist Sarah Stern really knocked it out of the park as well. There's some stuff I want to talk about with her colors, but I don't want this video to get too much longer than it is already, so I'm going to save it for a future video, but mark my words, we will circle back to a more in-depth discussion of her color work. For now, just know that I think she killed it, and she's a welcome addition to the team. At least I think she's going to be an addition to the team. It's a little unclear. I'm seeing conflicting information in regards to the credits for future issues, so I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there. Another thing that there wasn't a lot of room to talk about is Laserbeak's mission, no doubt to locate Megatron. And I think smaller numbers of characters weaving out of the story temporarily would be a great way to get some Transformers characters in the G.I. Joe book, as well as potentially giving the Joe team their first taste of a Cybertronian adversary. I don't know if that's necessarily what's going to happen here, but you got to admit, Laserbeak seems about all the Joe team would be able to handle right now, and even that's debatable, really. But maybe that's not going to happen at all. I don't know. But anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. I always appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Check out Teletran Tapes on YouTube, a new podcast that I'm a part of with Delta Trion and Swizz Prime for more conversation on this and future issues. I'll put a link down below. Give it a listen. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.